Hi everyone, welcome to Intland Software's webinar on Agile plus ISO 26262, Agile in Automotive Development. My name is Ben Hurampali, I'm a pre-sales colleague here at Intland, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. So let's see what's on the agenda for today. First, I'm going to talk about how and why software is becoming increasingly important in the automotive industry. From there, I'll move on to discuss Agile, the benefits it could hold for automotive embedded systems developers, and implementing Agile in automotive development. Then I'll talk about the standards and regulations that apply to the development of automotive software and how compliance with these regulations is possible in an Agile environment. Finally, I'll move on to discussing process control, documentation, traceability, and reporting, all followed by a live demo of codeBeamer ALM, where I'm going to be showing you our traceability browser, how you can plan your releases, and an approval process workflow. Okay, after the presentation and the live demo, you'll get a chance to ask all your questions during a Q&A session as always. And a recording of today's webinar will be available on the Intland website soon after the session. When visiting our events page, make sure you take a look at our upcoming webinars and conferences, and feel free to sign up for anything that you find interesting. Just a quick introduction to who we are, just a few words. We were founded in 1998. Our headquarters is here in Stuttgart, Germany. We have an office in the Silicon Valley, USA, and we're the sole vendors and developers of codeBeamer ALM. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly show you a list of our clients. As you can see, we serve customers from various industries such as automotive and medical device development, the defense and finance sectors, as well as high-tech embedded development companies. We have clients ranging from mid-sized companies all the way to large global enterprises such as Siemens, Samsung, and Lufthansa, where we have over 5,000 users, which can give you an idea how scalable our solution really is. Let me call your attention to one of our customers, Medtronic. They're the world's leading medical technology provider, and the reason this company might be interesting to you is that we have just released a case study that investigates how Medtronic implemented codeBeamer to streamline their scaled agile processes, something that I think any developer could benefit from. And if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, just feel free to download this case study from our website free of charge at intland.com. Okay, so we've come a long way since the first sensors were embedded in road vehicles. Software is advancing in leaps and is increasingly replacing or extending the functionality of hardware components. IoT connectivity is also becoming a standard, further increasing the complexity of software development in the automotive industry. By 2020, Business Insider Intelligence estimates that 75% of cars shipped globally will be built with the necessary hardware to allow people to stream music, look up movies, be alerted to traffic and weather conditions, and even power driving assistance services such as self-parking. There could be over 100 million lines of code in a modern car, and the sheer volume of which necessitates practices to cut development time and enhance the efficiency of the development lifecycle. On top of that, there may be dozens or even hundreds of suppliers involved in automotive embedded development. Various industry regulations may apply, forcing developers to adhere to the requirements of these standards. In the meantime, they also face the challenge of enhancing collaboration with other teams and departments in the development of an immense volume of software code. As a consequence, it's not surprising that automotive development processes are perhaps among the most complex life cycles that companies face. Okay, borrowing a methodology used in traditional or non-safety critical software development to increase the speed of product delivery, more and more automotive companies are choosing to implement Agile in their development. The problem with that is that Agile is an inherently decentralized approach. So it values collaboration, flexibility, and responding to change, while focusing less on set processes and thorough documentation. This makes it a very versatile and powerful tool if you'd like to increase the velocity of your development efforts, but it makes it difficult to comply with regulations. These standards and guides require automotive developers to enforce the use of mature, compliant processes, document the entire life cycle meticulously, and report on all the above when it's time for compliance audits. In addition to safety-related stipulations, a fundamental requirement of all standards and of ISO 26262 in particular is documentation. Not only do you have to use adequate processes, you also need to document and report on them, along with a change history of your work items, show full traceability, and prove process and permission control. These are all fundamental to verifying compliance. Then mitigating risks is also crucial. Even when using the adequate processes, some risks will be present in your development lifecycle and possibly even in your end product. Therefore, the right processes have to be implemented to address these hazards. The secret to the success of the companies that are able to use Agile in the development of safety-critical products is simple. They predefine compliant workflows, enforce these processes so that there are no deviations, and automate as much as possible. This is what we refer to as process control. They also use tools that may take much of the burden of documentation off their shoulders. By automatically recording development activities, these software solutions like our codeBeamer ALM greatly facilitate reporting on the entire lifecycle at compliance audits. One keyword to remember here is continuous compliance. This term refers to the practice of enforcing the use of compliant processes, thoroughly testing everything while ensuring traceability and recording documentation on the fly. Let's talk a bit more about automotive standards and regulations. As mentioned before, in order to reduce or mitigate the risks introduced by the sheer complexity of software, regulatory bodies have devised various automotive industry standards. These aim to enforce the use of adequate processes and hazard management methods to ensure the safety and reliability of automotive products. Consequently, compliance with these standards is key in automotive development. In addition to using suitable processes, maintaining complete traceability, and properly managing risks, another prerequisite to compliance is being able to prove all of the above at compliance audits. Finding efficient and cost-efficient ways to ensure and show adherence to regulations means a competitive advantage in the automotive field. As a derivative of IEC 61508, the standard called ISO 26262 is the most important regulation in automotive development. Titled Road Vehicles Functional Safety, this standard covers the entire life cycle of all electronic safety-related systems in the automotive industry, from requirements and design through implementation, integration, configuration, validation, and verification. Therefore, controlling and documenting all processes used throughout the life cycle is crucial to achieve compliance with ISO 26262. This is where the phrase that we mentioned on the previous slide, continuous compliance, comes into the picture. With the level of complexity we're seeing in automotive software, it's no longer realistic to think that you could just plan all the traditional stages of the life cycle and then stick a compliance phase at the end of it all to make up for everything you failed to do during the life cycle. Keeping compliance in mind as development progresses through the life cycle and using a tool that supports this approach allows you to save much of the time and effort you would otherwise spend on compliance. codeBeamer ALM is one of these software tools. In addition to offering sophisticated features to facilitate development, documentation, and compliance, it also offers a template dedicating to help you comply with automotive standards. Let's talk about our Intland's Automotive Iso 26262 template, which helps you leverage the powerful capabilities of codeBeamer ALM. It comes with pre-configured artifacts, processes, and documentation on ISO 26262 that's helping you comply with minimal effort. codeBeamer ALM offers security and process workflow features, supports electronic records and electronic signatures, and provides advanced risk management, quality assurance, and reporting functionalities. Therefore, codeBeamer's ALM capabilities support compliance with ISO 26262, adherence to the Automotive SPICE and CMMI models, and overall enables you to develop safety-related embedded systems. Let's quickly go through some of codeBeamer's relevant capabilities before jumping into the live demonstration of these features. Okay, our ALM also provides adequate access control. User permissions are highly customizable, and e-signatures can be required at any stage of any workflow, enhancing the visibility of audit trails. What you see on this slide here is our approval process with workflow. Here on the left-hand side, you can see this is the main process, the reviewal process of a requirement. As soon as the status of the requirement is put into approval pending, that triggers a sub-process, which is an approval task. And all the owners of this requirement have to accept or verify this task for the requirement to move into the approved status. This is a state chain workflow, as you can see, and e-signatures can be used to validate these approval processes. Okay, what you see here is our Kanban board. What you can see on all these, what you can see on this slide is you can actually manage all of your work items in one place. So these are all requirements here, and you can manage bugs, tasks, and just by dragging and dropping them into the right column, you can move them around. You can move these tickets around. You can verify separate columns for each statuses, different workflows working in the background for every different work item. And you can set work in progress limits, which shows that a column like the status in progress is overloaded, as you can see here, or other statuses have free capacity. I will show you how all this works. It's very easy to use in the live demonstration later on. Okay, this slide shows you a risk matrix diagram. The x-axis shows the severity, while the y-axis here shows the likelihood of a risk. codeBeamer supports requirements-based risk management, which means that you can derive a risk from a requirement and further derive a requirement from the risk to mitigate that risk. What you see here is the Traceability Browser. So, as most of you probably already know, traceability is one of the most important requirements of most standards and regulations, regardless of the industry. Being able to link requirements all the way to source code and that to tested features of the released product is a #1 priority. In order for you to ensure this kind of traceability, thorough documentation needs to be maintained throughout the life cycle. Keeping in mind all the above, it's becoming obvious that you'll probably need adequate tools in order to be able to achieve compliance while using Agile. I will show you how this works in the live demonstration as well. But before we continue, let me ask you a few questions, please. Okay, first, which tools are you using? Okay, great, thanks for your answers. Next, what are you searching a tool for? Okay, thanks. And one more for now. What methodology do you use for your software development? Okay, great. Thanks for your answers. That's it for now. Okay, let's jump into the live demonstration then. Okay, so what you see here is actually our Automotive Iso 26262 template. As you can see, we've got our wiki homepage, a bunch of documentation. We've got some pre-configured reports like this ASO report here, documentation on managing variants, and overall the ISO 26262. We've got these trackers configured here. As you can see, we've got hardware safety requirements set up, software safety requirements, releases, and this is just to give you a very quick overview. I'm not going to be showing you everything, but what I want to start off with is showing you the traceability browser. So I'm going to jump into my hardware safety requirements, for example, and I can reach my traceability browser by clicking on this button here. And in the traceability browser, I can choose to show the relationship from all of my requirements, bugs, all kinds of, all my trackers basically. I've got a preset saved, so I'm going to load that. And that's going to be for the entire life cycle. So moving from the relationship from hardware safety requirements through hazards, safety goals, all the requirements, all the tasks, and then down to the source code. So I'm going to load this preset. And you can see all the items here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, maybe you can see it better. So I've got my custom requirements going through hazard analysis and the relationship, as you can see, between all these. And I've got my all my requirements, moving on down to the tasks and down to the source code. So I can actually go into this repository commit, and I can open it up and I can see the source code here. So that's how you can really drill down, going from just custom requirements down to the source code. You can easily just click on export, create an Excel document from this, and it's as easy as that. Okay, I'm going to zoom back in a little. Now what I want to show you is the approval process, how that works in codeBeamer. So it's pre-configured, but it's not very difficult to set up, and this is included in the template. So I've got my hardware safety requirements, for example. Sorry. So I'm going to choose a requirement that's in the new status. As you can see, the red means it's in the new status. I'm going to click on this red bulb here, and I can choose this new status by just clicking on define. So I first have to start defining it, and then I can click on approve. And if I click on approve, this pops up where I can edit the requirement from this pop-up window, anything else I need to add before I send it for approval. As you can see here, owner is marked with a red asterisk, so that's a required field. So I have to specify an owner who will be approving this requirement. For demoing purposes, I'm just going to specify myself, but you can add more people. Usually the 4I principle is the use case here, where you specify 2 owners and both of them have to approve it. I'm going to click on save, and if I double click on it and open up the detail view, I can see I actually have a task assigned to me, which was triggered by the approval process. So I'm going to have to click on here, and if I go back, just to quick show you, I can't accept this. So if I try to accept it, and I try to click on save, it's going to give me an error message. So I'm going to have to first approve it. I go back into the task assigned to me, and I have to verify this task. So that means I'm accepting it. And as you can see here, I have to verify that I'm actually approving this. So I sign by, I have to specify myself and give my signature, which is my codeBeamer password. Just to show you, I'm going to type something random. It's verified, so I have to type my correct password here. Great, and now I'm going to go back to my requirement, And now, as you can see, it's automatically put into the status accepted. So that's the approval process. We went through the traceability browser real quick, and then I want to show you how you can plan your releases really easily with the Gantt chart. So for that, I'm actually going to show you a completely new, I'm just going to create a new project from scratch. And that way I can set up the hierarchy and really show you how it all works. I'm not going to use any templates. Add a quick name, no source code. And I'm going to go into my releases. I'm going to create a new release, which will be my release 1.0. And I'm going to create two sub-releases. Software development. And I'm going to add another one to release 1.0. So I'm going to go up one level and add hardware development as well. So now if I go back to my releases, I see I have two hardware and software development added. But I also want to add some milestones for hardware, for example, and sprints for software, just so we can see that both are supported. For hardware, I'm going to add milestone 1. Jump back a level and add milestone 2. And then jump back to software development and add my sprints. Sprint 1.1, I'm just going to add another one, sprint 1.2. And now you can see I've set up my hierarchy. Now I can start working with my items. Since this is a new project from scratch, so I'm going to go into my release planner here. And usually this is the project backlog, so I would already see all my requirements and my tasks and bugs and items here. But since I have nothing here, I'm just going to start adding a few things real quick. I'm going to add a few bugs. And it's going to start appearing here. So I'm adding them automatically into my release 1.0 now. I'm going to add another bug. And maybe a few tasks. Webinar task, that's fine. And add another task, webinar task 2. But like I said, so this isn't where you would add your customer and system requirements. So that's already when you start working on them and you plan your releases. So I'm going to just really quickly add these items and add another system requirement just so I can plan my releases. Okay, so I've added 2 bugs, 2 tasks, a customer and a system requirement. Now I can start just by dragging and dropping, I can add them into the hierarchy. I've got my release 1.0 on my left side, hardware development with milestones, and software development with sprints. So let's say this bug goes into sprint 1.1, I'm just dragging and dropping. Bug 2 goes into sprint 1.2, webinar task goes into milestone 1, customer requirement is part of hardware development, system requirement is in sprint 1.1, and then webinar task goes to milestone 2, for example. If I click on these, I can see all the work items that I have assigned to these releases or sub-releases or sub-sprints. And now if I go back into my dashboard, my release dashboard, I can see that I don't have anything. Everything is at 0% because I haven't started working on anything yet. I can see my work items assigned to these releases and that they're all in the status new. So if I go into hardware development, for example, I can open up my Gantt chart here. And as you can see, it's not planned, but I can just start dragging and dropping. So for example, I'm going to double click first to show you that I can plan it like this as well by choosing from the calendar. Let's say hardware development starts from May 1st to September 1st. And then if I wanted to drag and drop, I can just move this around. So I've got my milestone 1, and I want the entire hardware development to be covered by these 2 milestones. So I'm just going to drag and drop this over here. I'm going to move this next to, so it doesn't overlap, over into milestone 2 after milestone 1. And just so the entire development is covered with milestones, I'm going to plan them like this. It saves automatically. You might have noticed here that all changes have been saved successfully, so you don't even have to save. Everything is saved automatically. Now I'm going to plan my software development. Go up a level into software development. Same thing, open the release Gantt chart. Let's just say they're developed completely parallel, May 1st to September 1st, and it's covered by 2 sprints. And now I've planned my software development. Now if I go back up to my release, I can see that my hardware and software development has been planned, but my release has not yet, so I'm going to plan that as well. Let's say the entire release consists of only these 2 development life cycles, hardware and software, and now it's saved. So now I've planned my releases. Now I can start working on them, and I can use the Kanban board, which I showed you in the slides, to move around, really visualize the process that's going on with each work item. With all my requirements, as you can see, everything I've added, I've got my customer requirements, system requirements, the tasks and bugs here. So I'm going to start working on this customer requirement, for example. As you can see, there's a workflow working in the background. So as I move to different statuses or different columns, I've got different statuses for this specific work item, which is a customer requirement. Let's just start defining this requirement. If I start moving the task, you can see it's different. I can start, resolve, and complete the task. Let's say I'll resolve this. I'll put this bug 1 into progress, in progress. System requirement is waiting for approval. Let's resolve this bug and complete this task. And if I go back into my release dashboards, as you can now see, I can see the overview of how my release is doing. I've got 67% done. I can see it specifically for my hardware development and software development. I can open up all the items that are still in the sprint 1.1. I can see bugs are in progress, waiting for approval. And finally, another way you can still visualize this is, again, in the release Gantt chart. This gives you an even better overview of how your release is doing. So I can see my milestone 1 is complete, my milestone 2 is complete, and my sprint 1 is half complete, and my sprint 1.2 is completely complete. And overall, my entire release is 67% complete. That's how I'm doing right now. So that is all I planned for today's webinar, actually. So I've got one more question for you guys. If you could bear with me. Would you like to receive further information about codeBeamer ALM after seeing what you've seen here? All right, thanks. And now To close, now it's your turn. You can ask your questions if you have any. No questions? All right, then if you want to know anything else, you can also schedule a one-on-one demo. Just write us at sales@intland.com. Otherwise, join us next week for our next webinar, Doors Closed, Migrating from IBM Doors to a Modern Requirements Management System. And that's it for today. Thank you for your attention and see you next time.